I managed my wife's father's investment fund for 17 years. The room was silent when he said it, a silence so sharp it could split bone. "Clean your desk," my wife's father told me, his lips curling into the faintest smirk. "Noah will be taking over. Tomorrow." Noah. His son, a boy still wet with the smell of privilege, whose only knowledge of law came from glossy textbooks and dinner-table boasts. 17 years. 17 years of running his firm, managing his father's real estate empire, navigating every lawsuit, every hostile acquisition, every piece of legislation sharpened like a knife. While he collected the praise, I did the work. While he smiled at gala dinners, I silenced the bleeding clients with airtight settlements. And now, I was a name to be erased. The next morning he entered my office. Noah hovered at his side, smug in his pressed navy suit. "Ready to hand over your client list?" the old man asked, smiling as if this were nothing more than a handshake. I smiled back, a slow, calculated stretch of lips. "No," I said, "I'm here to—" His smile faltered, his pupils flickered. A tremor of something unspoken slid across his face. He didn't know it yet, but the game had shifted. And I was no longer his loyal son-in-law. I was the quiet storm he had built with his own hands. The betrayal wasn't sudden. It had been creeping, slow, like mold behind a wall. I only hadn't wanted to see it. 17 years ago, when I married his daughter, I believed I was joining a family. He had framed it that way. Loyalty for loyalty, blood for blood. My skills, his name. His empire, my mind. I gave him everything. The nights, the weekends, the silent sacrifices my wife pretended to understand, but never truly did. And yet, I had begun noticing. The dinners I wasn't invited to. The calls that ended the second I entered the room. The way Noah, his golden boy, was introduced at functions as the future of the farm, while I stood in the shadows, a disposable hand. I thought it was arrogance, ego, a father flaunting his son. But it was deeper. A quiet replacement had been underway for years. The clients I had nurtured, the trust I had built, being siphoned slowly into Noah's orbit. Phone calls redirected, meetings rescheduled without my knowledge. Even my wife began to slip questions into conversations, almost rehearsed. "Don't you think Noah should be more involved? Maybe it's time for the next generation." I laughed then. I shouldn't have. Because by the time he told me to clean my desk, the trap had already been set. I was meant to walk away quietly, 17 years erased in one polite smile. But they had underestimated one thing. I don't walk away. I kept my calm. That was my greatest weapon. On the surface, I complied. I smiled. I shook Noah's hand. I even congratulated him in front of the secretaries, who looked at me with confused pity. But beneath, I began. Every client file I had managed carried secrets, hidden clauses, quiet amendments, confidential settlements that only I understood because I had written them in language so precise that even seasoned lawyers missed the implications. For 17 years, I had built not just cases, but leverage. And now, I began cataloging. Not one client list, but 3. One I left in plain sight, a sanitized version, easy to inherit, worthless without my guidance. One I encrypted, layering it within the firm's digital archives, hidden in contracts so dull no one would dare open them. And the last, I carried with me, hard copies, handwritten notes, details of every client's unspoken fear, their real estate loopholes, offshore holdings, settlements buried in arbitration, the things that, if revealed, could break empires. I didn't need to expose them. I only needed to remind them who held the keys. At night, I lay awake beside my wife. her breathing even, oblivious. Was she in on it? Did she know her father's plan, or was she another pawn dressed in innocence? The thought gnawed at me. I remembered the faint hesitation in her voice when she said, "It's just business. You'll be fine." Fine. The word echoed like a curse. Fine meant disposable. Fine meant forgotten. Fine meant replaceable. And in that quiet darkness, my strategy crystallized. They thought they had cornered me, but I was about to turn the firm inside out without raising my voice, without lifting a hand. The sweetest revenge is silent. It came 3 weeks later. Noah's first victory as the new heir, a real estate acquisition worth nearly $100 million. He strutted through the office like a prince crowned too early, laughing too loudly, shaking hands too eagerly. But I knew I had written the contract that acquisition relied upon years ago, buried in a cross-lease agreement between 2 shell companies no one cared to trace. A single clause, one line, crafted by my hand that ensured any transfer without my explicit authorization was void. I watched as the deal crumbled. Quietly, methodically, the buyers pulled out. The financing evaporated. Noah's victory speech died on his tongue. He looked at me across the office floor. Confusion first, then fear, and then rage. Later that night, his father summoned me. His office smelled of old leather and arrogance. "What did you do?" he demanded, voice trembling with something dangerously close to desperation. I placed a thin folder on his desk. "Nothing," I said. "That clause was always there. You just never noticed." He opened it. His eyes scanned the familiar language, his own firm's letterhead staring back at him. His face drained of color. 17 years of trust, precision, loyalty, all crystallized into that moment. "You knew?" he whispered. "I always knew," I replied. And in that silence, the hierarchy shifted. The next board meeting was full. Every partner, every client representative. Noah sat at the head of the table, pale, sweating, his hands trembling as he fumbled through papers. I stood calmly, hands clasped behind my back. "Mr. Chairman," I said, nodding to my father-in-law, "perhaps we should review the acquisition reports." Eyes turned, pages shuffled. Gasps echoed as clause after clause revealed itself, not just in this deal, but in dozens of others. Hidden fail-safes, legal tripwires only I could navigate. I didn't raise my voice, I didn't accuse, I simply presented. Every head turned from Noah to me, from the old man's legacy to the man who had truly built it. By the time the meeting ended, Noah wasn't a successor. He was a liability. My father-in-law didn't speak. He couldn't. But his eyes said everything. The empire he thought he owned was balanced on my pen, my words, my silence. And now he understood. I didn't need to destroy him. I only needed to let him see how powerless he truly was. I walked out of that boardroom without looking back. My wife called that night. I didn't answer. Her father sent messages, first polite, then pleading. I left them unread. Because the truth was simple. I didn't need them anymore. 17 years I had given them everything. 17 years they thought I was replaceable. Now they knew. They could hire 1,000 Noahs, and still they would be trapped in contracts written by my hand, in shadows I had crafted, in a labyrinth only I could navigate. I wasn't their son-in-law. I wasn't their employee. I was their ghost. And ghosts do not leave. They haunt. His empire was never his. It was mine. And now he wakes every morning knowing it.